Okay, thank you very much, Nihai. Thank you everybody to be here. So, of course, yeah, I'm happy to be here, of course, and you would like, first of all, to thank Nihai and she for their invitation and for the organization of this interesting event in such a difficult period of time. So, my goal here, my aim in this talk is to show on a very simple ODE model, to show some techniques and some systematic ways to transform a highly oscillatory problem, or highly oscillatory evolution equation, into a smooth one. In that way, we can use usual or standard numerical scheme at arbitrary order. You can take any scheme, usual scheme at some order, at any order, in fact, and you can just use it on the new formulation of the system. So I want just to take a simple model, very simple, and just make my talk on this model. So of course, the applications or the extensions to PDEs are possible for some PDEs, of course, for some specific PDEs, and all this is summarized in the paper that I listed here, and all these works, the work I will present, or at least the part, I will present a part of this work is in collaboration with many collaborators here, like Chartier, Crouzet, Yamchi, Florian, Villemar, and also Shofei Zhao. Okay, so let me start. So, as I said, I will focus only on very simple ODE. The ODE will be oscillatory. The ODE, you can see it here. So the ODE is very simple. There is an operator, a stiff part here, which is here with the operator A, and with a frequency of oscillation, which is noted here, with gamma of t. And there is another part here, which can be, for the ODE, it's just a function of the unknown y epsilon. It can be a nonlinear function, but it can be also, if one wants to make some extension to some PDEs, it can be a differential operator. But let's assume that just a function, an operator, if you want, on y epsilon, or nonlinear function y epsilon, which does not commute with A. Of course, if the two operators commute, then the problem is very simple, and one has just to solve the first part separately from the second part. And there is no problem, in fact. So what we assume on A is assumed to be linear and skew adjoint. And we assume also that the eigenvalues of A are multiples of I, of the complex I, in such a way that the flow generated by A is supposed 2 pi periodic, supposed periodic with period 2 pi. So we assume always that gamma of t is positive, okay, that's just for simplicity. And we assume that epsilon, the stiffness here, the parameter epsilon, is between 0 and 1. So there will be two important cases in which for which the analysis is completely different. The analysis and also the numerical scheme which can be developed on it. So the case where gamma of t does not vanish, gamma of t stays bigger than some constant gamma 0, which is strictly positive. And the second case is the case where there is some vanishing at some point t0 in a given interval 0, capital T. Okay. So what is the aim, of course, of these techniques is to provide with the schemes, with numerical schemes, which are which have uniform accuracy with respect to this epsilon. What is uniform accuracy? Is the fact that I wrote here what is the definition of uniform accuracy. If you assume that U epsilon is the solution, the exact solution, and U epsilon delta t is the numerical solution, then the difference measured in some norms is smaller than c multiplied by delta t to the power p, where p is the order of the scheme, used scheme, and where c is independent of epsilon. Supremum on epsilon is smaller than this. So this is important because if one uses directly a standard scheme on the equation without transforming the equation, then one gets an error which is of the form delta t to the power p over epsilon to the power q, some power q. And this is not good because when epsilon goes to 0, this is very bad. And even if you use some sophisticated schemes like implicit in somewhere, or using some techniques like techniques for AP schemes, for example, some of the techniques for AP schemes, this will improve this kind of techniques, improve the behavior of the error. The error is now stabilized, but in general, the order of the method, of the numerical method, will be reduced. Instead of having the order p of the method we are applying, we have another q which is much smaller than p, or at least smaller than p, strictly smaller, and this is what we call the order reduction. So we want to avoid this also. Of course, we don't want to use the asymptotic models, the averaged models derived from the oscillatory problem, because the averaged models are only valid for epsilon small. So in the error, in the global error, we will have an error which is power of epsilon, and plus the error which is due to the numerical scheme. So this is not good for epsilon equal 1, for instance. So we want to transform the model in order in order that any conventional numerical scheme of order p can be applied safely without destroying the error. Okay, so there are many examples. I don't want to be, because of the timing, I don't want to explain the extension to PDEs, but I just give examples. For example, if you take the kinetic equation, Vlasov equation with strong magnetic fields. As you know, all of you know about these equations. Since we have a strong magnetic field, the stiff part is here, is in the transporting the velocity here, and this is directly linked to ordinary differential equation, because the characteristics of this transport equation are just these ones. Okay, and you have a stiff term here. Of course, we have developed, and in fact, we can bring down this equation to the framework I explained before, to the framework I presented before. And in fact, we did many works about this problem, because it depends if B is homogeneous in space or not. It depends if modulus of B is equal 1 or modulus B is not equal 1. It depends if B's have varying intensity or direction, etc. From the asymptotics point of view, from theoretical point of view, I think Mihai is a great specialist of this kind of problems, and you can find it here in his paper with his collaborators a lot about asymptotic behavior, like gyrokinetic models derived from this equation. But I should just emphasize on one thing: the main assumption made, both from numerical point of view, both on numerics or on theoretical works, is this assumption saying that the modulus of B stays larger than some positive constants. If not, all the analysis cannot work, and this, to my knowledge, if the modulus can vanish somewhere in space, this is, to my knowledge, open problem, even from the theoretical point of view. It is interesting to see what are, for example, the asymptotic model in this case. Okay, I don't know about this problem. I think it's an open problem. Okay, so there are other problems also, the other PDEs or ODEs coming from quantum theory. The class of problem is in general the problem of transitions of energy from one state to another, or exchange energies, or transition from one state to another in quantum theory. And the problem of transition are in general stiff, also stiff, and the use of a numerical scheme, of uniformly accurate numerical scheme, is very important in these cases. So again, there is an assumption saying that there is no vanishing. There is no vanishing of the frequency in order to be able to perform the analysis of the problem and also to construct numerical scheme to solve the problem. So let me go to the problem, to the ODE problem. So we go back to the ODE problem. So as I said to you, we consider this simple problem, okay, in which we have gamma of t here, which is the frequency, which is variant frequency. The first thing we do is very simple. It's just to say we filter out the main oscillation here. This operator will filter it out. In other words, we just make this change of functions. We consider u epsilon is equal to this multiplied by y epsilon, where capital S of t is just the primitive, or just the antiderivative of gamma, which is given by this expression. And then when you write the equation on u epsilon here, you get this equation where there is no 1 over epsilon outside the field. The field is bounded now, but it contains 1 over epsilon inside it. And the dependence of capital F here with respect to the stiff variable, if you want, is here, and is periodic. The dependence on the first variable of F is periodic. Capital F is just given in terms of this R here. It's just given by this formula. And we see that F is periodic in theta here because this is an assumption on A, on the operator A. So in both cases, vanishing cases or not, it does not depend on the fact if gamma vanishes somewhere at some time or not. The asymptotic model or the limit model is always the same. It is given by this equation on u bar. So u bar is the limit, the strong limit of u epsilon when epsilon goes to 0. So the equation u bar is just given by d over dt of u bar is the average of the capital of F with respect to the first variable applied to u bar. And u bar of 0 is the same initial condition as y epsilon. So the average is just given by this expression, of course. Okay. So now, in order to we assume first that gamma does not vanish, and we assume to simplify that gamma is equal 1. In order to develop a uniformly accurate scheme, we need, of course, we need to know the asymptotic behavior of the problem at different order in epsilon. We need to, it depends, of course, of the order of the scheme you want to construct. But if you want to construct, for example, a scheme of order P, we have to know the asymptotic behavior of the equation at least up to order P. Okay, so the asymptotic behavior of such equation an equation like this is very known from a while. In fact, the first averaging techniques have been introduced, at my knowledge at least, by Bogolyubov and Metropolsky in 1930, and from a mathematical point of view, if you want, from a rigorous point of view, I think the first paper on this averaging techniques is the paper by Perko. And what is in few words, in a nutshell, what is the purpose of this? What is the strategy? The strategy is to say that u epsilon is some change of variable, which I call here phi, which depends on t over epsilon, and of course depends on epsilon, of some function u bar. So u bar is assumed, it will assume to be smooth. U bar is assumed to satisfy some equation which is smooth in epsilon. All the singularity in epsilon is put in the change of variable here. So phi composed to u bar. And in fact, we assume that this phi has an expansion, this phi has an expansion in epsilon, in powers in epsilon in this case, because we assume that capital F is very smooth, enough. Okay, and all the work is to find, all the work is to find this expansion to find the K0, K1, etc., to find the average. This is the equation U bar is called the average model, and also to find the expansion of the solution U epsilon. In other words, the expansion of this change of variable phi here. Okay, so this is the first work, but in fact there is another work which is other works which are more recent in 2011, and which deal with the structure of this averaging techniques. The structure, because the averaged models are not unique. This change of variable and U bar are not unique. Of course, the composition of the two is unique, but you can change this change of variable is not known. It is known up to a condition like average is equal 0 or some value at some point in time. Okay, so it is not unique, and there are different change of variable depending on the structure we want to have. So, in fact, when we put the change of variable into the equation, we just we put this in that. We put this in that, or this one. It's equivalent. We put this in the equation, in the original equation here. Then you get an equation. It's just very simple. It's really simple. You get an equation on phi theta. Phi theta is the change of variable. And this is the place where you see that you cannot solve in a unique way phi theta. But if you assume, for example, that the average of phi theta with respect to theta is identity, is the operator identity, then you can integrate this equation. Of course, you cannot solve exactly the equation, but you can integrate, and you can get recursive relations between phi n and phi n plus 1. You integrate and you replace in the right-hand side phi by phi n, and in the left-hand side is phi n plus 1. It is a recursive relation. You can get the terms of the expansion at any order. So this is averaging techniques are like this. Okay. For example, and you get the averaged model, which is given here. The averaged model is the equation U bar, which is the average. The field is the average of F. But you can get, okay, you can get more and more expansions. So what is the result of this analysis, of the analysis done in the literature, is that if you truncate this expansion, the expansion again I presented, if you truncate it at some truncation parameter capital N, then you have, it can be rigorously proved that U epsilon, which is the exact solution, minus the truncated solution, is of the order epsilon to the power n plus 1. Okay? And this is good for numerics, so we have to deal with this. And this is only valid for when gamma of t is not vanishing. So if gamma is variable and not vanishing, just to say a word, that if gamma is varying and not vanishing, it is the same case as if gamma was equal 1. It is the same, because it's just, to see this, you just change the time. You consider the change of time. Small s is equal to capital S of t, where S of t is the antiderivative of gamma. Then you write an equation on the new function v epsilon, which is a function of s now, which is equal to epsilon of t. And you consider that the time t, the original time t, is a function of the new time s. So you write the system of equation on v and on t. So dv over ds is equal to this quantity here, and dt over ds is just 1 over gamma. So since gamma is smooth, because gamma does not vanish, and it is supposed smooth, so 1 over gamma is smooth, then you can perform the classical averaging. That's why I said that when the frequency is varying, is the same that when gamma is equal 1, if gamma does not vanish. And you can conclude that U epsilon, for example, minus the averaging, its strong limit, which satisfies an averaging equation here, U bar, is equal, is of order epsilon. Okay? Now, to solve this equation, there are many ways to solve the equation numerically. Before going to the vanishing case, I just want to say that there are we developed many strategies to solve these equations in a uniform way. So the first one is the two-scale method. Is just based on the fact that we add a variable in order to, instead of solving in small u epsilon, we solve in capital U, which has two variables now, not only t, but t over epsilon as independent variables. And we assume that u, capital U of t and t epsilon is u epsilon of t. So you write the equation on u, and you get this equation. Now it is a partial differential equation. And in fact, what is the trick is to say that now, since I have an equation on capital U on which the initial condition is free, we can choose the initial condition. The only condition we have to satisfy in order to recover the original problem is the condition U of 0 and 0 is equal capital U0, which is the initial condition, the original initial condition. So we have a freedom. We have a freedom in choosing U of 0 of theta. And in fact, when you have a freedom in choosing in the choice of a differential equation and you want to solve it numerically, in general, we choose the way, we choose the initial condition in such a way that the solution is smooth with respect to epsilon. And the derivative of capital U should be the derivative at some order, it depends on the numerical scheme you want to perform, should be uniformly bounded with respect to epsilon. And this, in fact, the way to do this is just to take as the initial condition for capital U. But for example, if we want a scheme of order 2, we just make the averaged model up to order 1 in epsilon as an initial condition for capital U. If you do this, then you will have, you will ensure that the capital U has time derivatives up to order 2, which are uniformly bounded in epsilon. And this is good for numerics. And in general, you can take the averaged expressions up to order n to construct an initial condition which ensures this uniform boundedness of the time derivative of u. So this is the first method. The second method is almost similar, but it has the advantage to not to add a new variable. No, in fact, we don't need to add the new variables. And the method says that just that instead of solving in small u epsilon, solving the equation u epsilon, we solve the equation u bar epsilon and v epsilon. What is u bar epsilon and v epsilon? U bar epsilon is just the averaged equation up to some order in epsilon. The change of variable here, phi, as I explained, is the change of variable I introduced, but truncated to some n, some parameter n. Then this is what we call the macro part, the biggest part, if you want, when epsilon is small. This is the macro part, and then define v epsilon as being the difference between u epsilon and this macro part. Okay, so doing this, we know instead of solving u epsilon, we solve u bar and v epsilon, and you can prove rigorously that the time derivative of u bar and the time derivative of v epsilon are uniformly bounded up to n plus 1. So we can perform any numerical scheme on it, and it's okay. And after, to recover u epsilon, we just apply the formula, the micro-macro decomposition. Okay. Now, okay, I don't want to. Okay, now I just want to see some words about the vanishing case. So vanishing case is not the same as the non-vanishing case, as I said. Why? Because if you try to do the same, we change time. So I take here an example, just a simple example. Gamma of t is a power of t minus t0 to the power p. And then we'll assume that t0 is equal to 0, in fact. But it's the same if t0 is not equal to 0. Okay? We take the same change of variable. Small s is capital S of t, where capital S is an antiderivative of gamma. And you consider the new function v epsilon of s, which is equal to epsilon of t. We write the equation of v epsilon. We consider t as a function, original time as a function of s, and we have this equation, as if you remember well. So you have these two equations. Now you cannot, in fact, apply the classical averaging because gamma is now singular, and so the classical averaging is not valid. And in fact, when we try to do the analysis by hand, in fact, we can prove that u epsilon minus u bar is the limit, the strong limit of u epsilon, is in fact of the order of epsilon to 1 over p plus 1. Okay, so it's not of order epsilon as in the ordinary or usual framework of classical averaging. So the proof is very simple. I mean, just instead of doing integration by part like standard averaging, here you have a sort of a stationary phase effect, and you have to take into account of this. So you have an interaction between time and the periodic dependence of capital F. So I don't want to go in techniques just because you don't have time. So you can. I wanted just to emphasize that the context is very different from the classical case. So in fact, even more, we can we can show that the correction is epsilon. The first correction is of order epsilon to the power 1 over p, 2 over p plus 1. Sorry, and in some cases we can also show that even there are corrections of the order of epsilon log epsilon. It's just to say that you can find very different behaviors. It depends on p, of course, and it depends on what we are doing. But if when gamma is singular, the behavior is completely different. But we can perform, we can try to perform the same micro-macro decompositions. But now, in fact, forget about it, just look here. We can, in fact, decompose u epsilon as u tilde plus w epsilon. U tilde is the macro part and is given in the same, with the same formula is capital F of the period. In fact, I should say it is not periodic now. The difference is phi is not periodic. It is not a periodic value. There is not, because there have been interaction between time and the periodicity which was in the problem, and phi is no more periodic. But we can prove that u tilde and w epsilon, not u tilde, sorry, u bar and w epsilon are smooth, satisfy smooth equations. And if you solve the equation u tilde and w epsilon, u bar and w epsilon, then we can recover u tilde, and then you can recover u epsilon, which is equal to u tilde plus w epsilon. So we can show, as I said, that w epsilon is smooth in the sense that w epsilon is smaller than epsilon, and the derivatives are bounded up to order 2. So since the derivatives are bounded up to order 2, this means that we can perform any numerical method of order p, and we are sure that the result with the scheme, the accuracy of the scheme will not depend on epsilon, and the order p will not depend on epsilon, will not be degraded. Okay, just to show you some numerical results. So I take just a sort of maybe academic model. Maybe there is no physics behind. I don't know, but okay. Let's say that it is an academic model, and you have a Hamiltonian model which is called the Henon-LS model, which is a Hamiltonian of size 4. Okay, it's 2 by 2, and you have an oscillations between the first and in the third component here. The gamma of t is assumed to be vanishing frequency. And anyway, we perform a numerical scheme according to the method I proposed to you. And what we see in general when we perform a uniformly accurate scheme, like I showed to you, we see here on the left that this is error in terms of delta t, in terms of h, which is equal to delta t, for different values of epsilon. And we see that the curves are almost the same. This means that the curves of accuracy do not depend on epsilon. We can also plot, in general, we plot also, to see this, we plot also the error in terms of epsilon for different delta t. And we see if you fix delta t, then the error is almost the same. It's the same. If you fix delta t, it's the same. It does not depend on epsilon. Okay, let me just, if I have maybe a few minutes, just to say that when we want to apply to a PDE, we have to work a little bit because we have to do some tricks in order to get the nice framework of the ODEs I explained before. So I just mentioned maybe a quantum model on which we worked with Nicolas, Xi, and Florian. So maybe just to explain, the quantum model contains 3 equations, F plus here and F minus and F, which are the Wigner distribution, of the particles in a graphene. In fact, it's a semi-classical model for transport of electron in graphene. But the most important thing is the third equation. The third equation describes the evolution of F, which is the interaction, which describes the interaction between F plus and F minus. So the equation on F, I wrote it here, has an oscillatory term, which is here, which because of this I, which is the complex number I, we have an oscillation here. But the oscillation depends on P. The F depends on T, X, and P. The oscillation depends on P, and there is a differential operator here which contains P. So this differential operator does not commute with the main oscillations here, the main oscillation here. So this is problematic because, for example, you cannot filter out this oscillation as we did before for ODEs and then perform the method. So we have to do something else before performing a numerical method on such kind of problems. Okay, so what we do, and then maybe time is okay. Okay, maybe a few minutes. Okay, what we do is just the trick is to define a new time, but a new time which depends on T, X, and P, because the oscillations here are not only in time, but are in time in X and P. So we consider a new time, which is capital S of T and X, X and P, and S satisfies this transport equation, which is here. And this transport equation, of course, is inspired by the form of the equation. When we do this, and for example, the first remark is that this equation does not contain any epsilon. It is epsilon independent. So we can solve it as you like. And in fact, in this case, we can solve it exactly. Okay, so we compute this capital S, and we compute the new function, the new equation in this time small s. When you compute the new function, the equation of the new function, then you get something which does not depend on P here, and then you get rid of this dependence on P, which is very important. But still, we need that P could not vanish because you have a division by P here. And in fact, if P vanishes, then even the asymptotic models are not the same. We have to develop, and even in this case, I think it's open. Well, you have to develop new models, or you have to find, in fact, new asymptotics, and then to develop new schemes. But even for P not vanishing, you have to do this before performing numerical scheme with it. So the curves are the same. It is not necessary to show you are the same for this, but what is interesting maybe to show you this curve where I plot the solution itself. The solution is highly oscillatory. Okay, the solution F is highly oscillatory, and what we see is when we perform our numerical method, we get exactly the point on the curve, even if we don't resolve the oscillation. So you get it, you can get, and of course, okay. Of course, you can also get the shape of the function between the two times. Since you can interpolate, in fact, you can make interpolation on the macro path and on the micro path. You can do interpolation. The error of the interpolation do not depend on epsilon, because the equations satisfied by the macro path and micro path are very smooth. And then once you have this interpolation, you apply the change of variable, which is singular, but it is explicit, and then you get the shape of your function. It is not a problem to get the shape, but it's amazing to see that you can get exactly pointwisely the curve. And we can also, maybe just 1 minute, so I can also, for example, there is a transition, transition rate in quantum theory, transition of energy, which is called the Landau-Zener transition from states or from particles plus to particle minus. And there is a formula which is called Landau-Zener, which quantify the transition between states in some quantum semi-classical models. And it is in general difficult to get, it is in general, it is impossible to get this with standard schemes, but with our uniformly accurate scheme, you can get the behavior of this Landau-Zener formula with respect to epsilon. I think I have to stop here. I can stop here because maybe just make a conclusion. Just to say that maybe I just say one thing, which seems to me important, is or two things. For example, when the frequency is vanishing, the systematic derivation and the structure of the asymptotic model is not known. It's an open question. When you have this stationary phase effect, I don't know how to systematize, how to make systematic the asymptotic expansion, the averaging of the model. And there is another thing in quantum theory or in general in transport PDEs, when you have some frequency which depends on T, X, etc. What are the asymptotic, when you have a vanishing frequency, also in this case, what are the asymptotic models and how to do numerics in general for this? For example, when the magnetic field vanishes somewhere, how to do. So I stop here and thank you very much for your attention.
Mohamed, you said that when the function gamma t is singular, you try to solve the equation dt over ds equal 1 over gamma of t. And because the singularity of gamma, you lose some convergence, order of convergence.
Yes, yes.
And you said that the point is to perform some integration by paths.
Yes.
Overcome this difficulty. So
yeah, I can show you this if you want. Here. When gamma vanishes somewhere, it is not true that u epsilon, the convergence is not of order epsilon. It is of order epsilon to the power 1 over p plus 1. P being the order of vanishing of gamma. And you can prove it in a very simple way. The proof is here. If you see my screen, you see?
Yes.
Yeah, the S is the change of time. The change of time S is the antiderivative of gamma. So you write your equation in terms of S, and then you write how we call this integral formula. You just integrate between 0 and S. Okay.
Yes.
And then you subtract. Then you subtract from F. You subtract the average of F with respect to the first variable, and you add it. Okay. You just subtract and add it. So you have the average here, and f minus its average is in R, is the remainder. So the remainder is here. Okay?
Yes.
The remainder is here. So now what we did when the in the classical averaging, we don't have this term gamma to the power minus p over p plus 1. We don't have this because p is equal 0. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Now and then this minus this is of average 0.
Yes.
Because it's okay. Then it's like exponential I multiplied by gamma over epsilon. This is where epsilon comes from, because it is an integration of a periodic function which has mean 0. So R epsilon, so R epsilon is of order epsilon in this case. But in the case when P is not 0, then you have this term sigma to the power minus P over epsilon interact with the oscillation. And in fact, you can show that if you put the change of variable sigma, you change it to sigma over epsilon, R over epsilon is given by this expression here. And you see that you have epsilon to the power 1 over p plus 1 here. And this integral here converges because of this sigma to the power minus p over p plus 1. This integral is now convergent. If p is equal 0, this integral is not convergent. Okay? You see my point?
Yeah, yes.
So this is why you have epsilon to the power 1 over p plus 1.
Okay. Thank you. There is a question or a comment by Claude. Does that mean that average works in the presence of singularities? This is your point. So when you have singularities, you can perform this kind of computations. And
what is the question? Sorry,
there is a message on chat by Claude.
Yeah.
Does that mean that average works in presence of singularities?
No, the classical averaging does not work. The classical averaging does not work. But of course, the average, for example, the average equation is the average limit is the same, but the error, the convergence, or the next term is not the same. The order of convergence depends on the order of vanishing of t of gamma. So of course you can average, but it is not. You cannot develop a theory of averaging which is similar to the classical one. In the classical theory of averaging, you have a systematic way to compute terms at any order. But here, when gamma vanishes, you cannot. You don't have a systematic method to compute the terms at any order, the terms of the expansion. And even we don't know what is the expansion. Is it in powers of epsilon? Is it in log epsilon or something? We don't know this. So we have to do it by hand. And what we hope is to be able to do something which is systematic, because we like the systematic ways, because we want to put it in numerics, and we don't want to care about developing for each numerical test. We don't want to develop this kind of asymptotics by hand, because it's very difficult. Up to order 1, it's okay, or order 2, but it becomes very computationally hard to do it.